Sometimes people think that the central banks actually bring stability in the economy, but that's not actually the case every time. Yeah, central banks are poised to bring stability in the economy, separated from the politics. That's where the Federal Reserve is separated from the politics. Generally, the stability is the demand of being a central bank. Okay, it's about doing the hard stuff that no one wants to do. In politics, every other party wants to do the easy things for the people, which bring pleasure to the society for the sake of just votes. What the central banks actually do is ultimately opposite of sometimes people want. So that's what central banks are actually desired to do. But sometimes over expectations are not reliable. I think people just expect them to work in a way that they think they are going to do, but they are not. Sometimes they are just openly accepting whatever they wrong, and sometimes they are just silently denying whatever they did wrong in the economy. Why I'm thinking like this? The reason is that recently I was discovering much more about a Greek debt crisis. If you don't know about a quick debt crisis, let me give you a review of it, whatever it is. It was about year 2011 when the Greece actually defaulted on its sovereign debt. And the reasons are simple. It was the adoption of euro, but the way it adopted is very tricky and manipulative. To adopt a euro in the European Union, it was a requirement to have the debt to GDP ratio at that time of about 60%. But Greece did not actually failed on that criteria. So what they did is that they actually collaborated with the Goldman Sachs in America and did a derivative trade-off. The most of the debt was in the dollars and Japanese yen. So what the Goldman Sachs did, it just converted that debt into the euro-denominated debt at a market favorable rate, like at very lowest rate, just to bring the debt to GDP ratio to below 60%. The Goldman Sachs did that in hope to get money in return at premium in later in time. So this was what actually masked the debt of the Greece. And yeah, European Union accepted the Greece to use the euro because at the time the accounting treatment which was used to establish this criteria did not had any kind of measurement for the derivatives trade-off. Like they just thought that this trade is something with the bank, not with the government debt. After that, he did the 2008 financial crisis. It was a time when a lot of other manipulative problems across the world in the financial world actually got uncovered. And yeah, Greece was one of them. It actually defaulted on its debt at that time. Debt was reaching to new heights. So it actually affected the European Union generally. So many people think that it is about the Greece, but it's actually not about Greece. Whatever the Greece did is wrong, I know, but the way European Union actually supported that kind of problem is also a bit problematic because the euro is considered as something kind of irrevocable. Okay, like once you are in, you cannot get out. It is presented in that way. Okay, if the Greece just had dropped the euro, then the market would be pricing this risk also in a euro's price against other currencies. Okay, this was a risk, so the European Union had to support that Greece in this matter. There was another problem because a lot of the debt was held by other French and Italian banks, so it was just the risk of spillover effects. And yes, then what the European Union did, they just bailed out the Greece. But why I'm talking about central banks here? Central banks are just kind of nasty creatures. I think they just do whatever they want. They don't think about traders or investors, I think. So, but when this was happening, there was another thing that was happening at the time. It was in Switzerland. The currency of Switzerland is kind of considered as a heavenly one, but the problem is that whenever there's kind of recession fears and some other problems in the financial world. A lot of people just put their money into the safe haven assets, just like gold. And the Swiss franc is also considered as kind of gold in currencies. It has its own history. Swiss franc was back to the gold until year 2000. Because of that, the Swiss National Bank actually held up a lot of gold reserves now. So also because of the political stability of the Switzerland, because it is kind of a neutral country against all other countries around it, so it does not get politically involved too much. So Swiss franc is kind of considered as a safe haven asset because of these qualities. But right now, what we need to understand is that Swiss economy is kind of an export-oriented economy. 75% of the GDP was recently from just exports. They survive on the exports, and for its export-oriented economy, it is important to have a currency that is not too much stronger against other currencies. It is very important for them to have a kind of a little weak currency. So on the other hand, the Swiss franc is considered as a safe haven asset. So whenever this kind of situation like the quick debt crisis happens, the people are going to move their money from euro and other currencies to the Swiss currency. It is kind of a normal behavior between traders. So that was actually becoming problematic for the Swiss economy. Their franc was becoming too much stronger at that time. So what the Swiss National Bank did, it just pegged the Swiss franc to euro at a rate of 1.20. So the Swiss National Bank actually publicly announced that we are going to buy the euros at the open market just to balance this peg in the market. But we people just literally don't understand that our economies, our world runs on the supply and demand thing. The Swiss National Bank was actually pegging the euro in a way that it was just making the euro stronger against the franc, printing more francs, selling them on the open market for the euro at the best possible rate, just to make the euro a bit stronger against its own currency to create a balance. But yeah, we know that it is not possible infinitely. But the way the Swiss National Bank actually publicly announced was problematic, because it announced that we are going to support this back infinitely. So that actually created a problem. They just started this back kind of in year 2011. In year 2015, they just silently pulled out of this peg without any warning. As I said, we don't understand the supply and demand too much clearly. We just live in a delusional world sometimes. We're going to think that this is going to happen infinitely. We are just going to print more money to bring the stability in the economy. This is not an easy task to do. Okay, being a central bank is hard, but being a better central bank is much harder. Whatever you are going to think right now, I think you are just thinking that Swiss National Bank, the Switzerland, which has its GDP of about 20% from the financial services exports, which is kind of a financial haven of the world, as we know that Switzerland has very strong financial system. This is where we need to understand that we cannot run from the law of supply and demand. In the early 2015, European Central Bank actually was going to announce some more cuts just to stimulate the European zone economy. Okay, because of the debt crisis, there was a recession, and whenever the rate cut is at the corner, the currency is again going to become more weaker against other currencies. And the same did happen with the euro. It was just becoming weak and weak day by day. So the SNB, Swiss National Bank, actually thought, how long we are going to support this? It is becoming a burden. The balance sheet of the Swiss National Bank was becoming a euro dump. So they just silently pulled off the peg from the market, and when they did that, franc appreciated against euro by almost 30% intraday. There was this kind of much volatility. The S&P was holding this pressure behind its back. So it stabilized around 20%. So the currency market again got stabilized, and the market was pricing the Swiss franc in its original form, in its raw form. And yeah, we can learn a lot from this event. The first thing is that we cannot always trust our central banks. Central banks are entities to stabilize the economy, and we need to think rationally from their perspective what they're going to do next, not what they're saying. Because a lot of traders just lost a lot of money in this pack when they silently pulled off the pack. The people who were trading at that time did not actually manage the volatility with greater skill level. I think you learned some important nuances out of my discussion. So subscribe to my channel so I can put more stuff like this. Bye.